Welcome, HTG members, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this webinar. I am Sarah McElmurray with RapidFire Tools. Joining us on the line today is Mark Winter, VP Sales, and Kevin Jones, Sales Engineer for RapidFire Tools. Before we go ahead and get started with today's content, I'm going to cover a few basic logistics. Because we have such a large number of attendees on today's webinar, we have muted all phone lines to reduce any background noise. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please notify us using the chat box on the right side of your screen. There will be a question and answer session at the conclusion of the presentation, but please feel free to enter questions as they come to you. Also, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for you within the next few days. Just to set everyone's expectations and make sure you've come to the right place, this webinar is tailored specifically for HTG members. Mark is going to start us off and spend a few minutes talking about the importance of performing network and security assessments for generating new business with new clients, as well as using them with existing customers. Mark is then going to show you how Network Detective works to first scan the network and then the report generator, where you will brand and create professional reports. Next up, we're going to spend some time with Kevin, who will go into detail on how to use the great information generated in the reports. At the end of the session, please stay on the line because we will present our special offers with a link to a special order page with some excellent discounts and an opportunity for you to get additional savings if you act quickly. So we're going to go ahead and get started with today's content, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark. Mark, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thanks very much, Sarah. Appreciate that. So I'm Mark Winter, VP Sales for RapidFire Tools. So briefly, a little about our company. It was founded by Michael Mattel, an entrepreneur and former MSP himself. And so, well, we've really got IT service provider DNA at the helm of our company, and we do truly get it when it comes to real-life uses for our tools. Our focus is 100% on the service provider community. And if you attend any industry events, there's a good chance you'll see us there as a sponsor, you know, whether it's associations like HTG, media outlets like Everything Channel or Channel Pro, training organizations like Robin Robbins, or events put on by vendors like IT Nation. You know, you'll find us here supporting these organizations, showing off our stuff, and you know, speaking with prospects and customers alike. And speaking about our customers, we sell our tools direct only. And in the past 2 years, we've had literally thousands of IT service providers sign up for our flagship product, Network Detective. You know, so by now there's thousands of IT pros using our software, making us the #1 provider of non-invasive IT assessment tools. Why have we become so popular so fast? It's because IT assessments really have become a basic building block for almost every IT service company out there. And so, you know, a little bit about IT assessments. You know, as service providers, we really all do them or should be doing them. And there's a lot of really good uses for offering IT assessments, you know, to both prospects and customers. These assessments could be general network and system level assessments to deeper security and even Exchange or SQL. And when I speak with folks in the service provider community, you know, the top uses of assessments range from lead generation and pre-engagement checks, you know, and onboarding to regular use at all customers. And I'll spend a few minutes to touch on each of these, maybe give you an idea of how you can use them in your business. So, you know, when we are at trade shows or on the phone, you know, we speak with a ton of managed service providers, and it should be no surprise that a key area of focus that they tell me is growing their business by adding customers. So how do you do that? Marketing and lead generation, of course. And, you know, but along with good tactics, a good list, and, you know, terrific copy, you really need a compelling offer or call to action, as they say. You know, something that's going to get a prospect to read what you've got, you know, what you propose to them in your email or other marketing, pick up the phone or reply to your email and say, sure, I'm up for a sales call. Let me ask you, have you ever Googled your competition? One of the things you'll notice is that a lot of them offer free network audits or free network assessments. And how obvious. And if you think about it, is there a better way to entice a prospect? You're going to offer them a free, valuable service, while at the same time, you get a chance to look under the hood and see what's wrong in that network. That way you can kind of highlight those issues and sell against it. And ultimately, if you were going to put together a quote or a proposal, you would need to do some amount of this anyway. So it's really just too perfect. But performing assessments can really be time-consuming and costly unless you've got the right tools. We think the right tool should be non-invasive and leave nothing behind, especially if the prospect has an IT person or company that they're already using, because they're not going to want you to tip them off that they're looking around, right? And it's got to be automated. So, think about being able to kick off a data collection, letting it run while you've got a chance to, sit down, talk with the business owners, learn about their business challenges, how they're using IT, what problems they're having, and, of course, sell and build rapport. People buy from people at the end of the day. And, of course, any data collection that you're doing should be fast and problem-free. Make you look professional and organized. Ideally, if you're using an automated tool, it should finish up in the same time that your 30 to 60-minute presentation's done, so it's done when you're ready to leave. And the end result should be reports that present the information in a very professional, well-organized manner. And really should be fully brandable with your client's name and, of course, with your company branding. And what you're looking for is a way to, identify or highlight that their current IT provider perhaps isn't doing the job as well as it could be. Look for things like poor configurations, internal or external security risks and vulnerabilities. But if you are offering a free assessment, think about what you're going to leave behind. You really don't want to leave behind all of the details, because they can then fix that without you. But you certainly still want to leave something behind along with your proposal or quote that's going to be of value and leave a great impression of you. So let me just say, whether or not you're using assessments for lead generation, let's say that you're ready to build your proposal for onboarding a new client, whether that's for block time or fully managed services. You're really going to need to do an IT assessment in this case, because unless you're asking for trouble, you can't really properly quote the opportunity unless you know the technical makeup of your prospect's current network and systems. You need to know what you're going to be supporting, how many workstations are active on the network, what applications they're running, the makeup of the PCs. Are they new, old? What operating system? How much RAM? Are they all in XP? Because all of this gives you an idea of the types of issues you're likely to encounter and how needy your organization might be. And of course, you need to know, how many servers they've got, printers, network devices, because you're going to be supporting all of that. And then within Active Directory, you're going to be managing that too. You need to know, is it set up properly and well maintained, or is it a mess? Is it overly complex, or maybe too simple for the environment? How much work are you going to have to do here? And then how secure is the network from the outside? So performing a detailed network assessment is really a necessary component of building that quote, and of course putting together the plan to onboard the customer or that prospect to make them a customer. And if you've got Exchange or SQL on that prospect site, you're going to want to include a scan of that too to see how well it's set up and being used. And if you're performing or maybe proposing, let's say, an Exchange migration, you really need the deep level of understanding that a good tool can provide you. And at the end of the day, good documentation of the network, including everything from the assets to user login, Active Directory configurations, network shares, etc., really should become part of the proposal as a baseline for the project. And it's essential in many cases for justifying complex or time-consuming tasks. So you're ready to onboard the prospect. Using an assessment here is obvious. You definitely want to make sure that you've got a baseline snapshot of the new customer's network and system configuration, right, prior to bringing them on board, since you need to know everything about their environment and need to communicate that to your help desk or level 1 techs. And this is the same information I just went over in the pre-engagement assessment. You need to know all about the assets you're supporting, what they are, their age, software that's on the network, etc. And that's true whether or not you're going to be setting up monitoring. And really, like I said, it's essential to document and communicate to your team the environment you're going to be supporting. And as HDG members, I assume most of you, or if not all of you, are using ConnectWise. So you need to get the information into that as well. Now, ideally, you'd like to be able to take the information from your assessment tool and pre-populate your PSA with information from the client system. And Network Detective, by the way, can do that for you. So performing assessments, whether at prospects or customer sites, is often going to turn up the opportunity for new projects. Examples might include identifying systems that are near capacity, or of course, old machines nearing end of life, or OS issues, and all these turn into, migration projects or prospective upgrade projects. And then you've got Active Directory cleanup, maybe fix things like group membership that's providing unnecessary access to confidential information. I spoke with a network detective customer recently. They ran a report, happened to have been against a school system, very large network. They found over 700 old accounts with logins still active. Imagine students having active login credentials to their network. This is a huge security risk, something the on-site IT was supposed to have handled. This, of course, led to a nice project for them and a lot of ongoing work. You might also identify things like inconsistent security policies across the network, or find holes in security practices that need to be put in place. And exchange migrations, I mentioned that already, whether it's to Exchange 2010 or 2013 or to the cloud, it's a great opportunity for you. And having the documentation of the current environment will really help you scope the project and give you the documentation you need on things like mailboxes, distribution lists, mobile device use, and more. And of course, the reports from the assessment do more than help you find the potential projects. They'll document the issue and provide the tool to help you sell that project to your clients in the first place. And of course, run it afterwards too. Gives you documentation then on the updated environment, and it's going to help you show your clients that you finished the work, help you get paid a little bit sooner. And this is important. You really should be providing a regular health check for all of your customers and make it part of your technology business reviews, whether that's quarterly or some other regular interval. Having additional documentation alongside information from your RMM or your PSA tool definitely can add value to the client relationship. And in some cases, it might be something you can charge extra for. So from a general perspective, you're going to want to make sure that you aren't supporting systems that might have been added to the network without your knowledge. Perhaps you're not even being paid to support that. Identify and uncover issues that need fixing, and document areas where you can sell new projects, like I talked about a moment ago. And if you're not already doing so, consider adding a security assessment to your offerings. It's definitely something you might be or should be able to charge more for. Think about it. Your clients' networks, and indeed their business, are constantly at risk. And I'm sure I don't need to convince you that viruses, spyware, malware, et cetera, are really very real threats to your client's network and their business. And even the best AV and malware protection isn't going to be perfect 100% of the time. And when there's a problem, a single user can be down for hours, and if it spreads to the network, results could be even worse. So by performing regular security health checks, you can help your clients protect their assets, guard against downtime, really help them sleep better at night. And the key here is doing it regularly. Running a security assessment once and addressing the first set of issues you uncover is just the first step. Things change, and it's up to you to keep your customers' networks running and secure. And the neat thing, if you do have a tool like Network Detective, you don't necessarily have to have expensive security experts on staff to perform this work. Let me also say, you're probably responsible for your client's email, right? When was the last time you really examined the setup of their Exchange environment? There's absolutely nothing worse than getting an irate call from the CEO because emails are being rejected from a full mailbox. Or what about mailbox permissions and delegated accounts? Sometimes there's a need to give one or more people permission to access someone else's mailbox or group mailbox. And of course, it'd be on a temporary basis for things like vacations, etc. And you definitely want to make sure that things were set right again afterwards. And you also consider providing SQL Server health checks. Validate and document the health, or uncover issues like database fragmentation, or locks or missing indices on key tables. Being able to regularly check the health of SQL, whether you're doing the DBA work or not, can really raise yourself from just an IT provider to more of an application level consultant. And again, don't just send over the reports. Schedule time, go through it, really add value to your relationship with your customer. So I hope I've given you a couple of things to think about as far as how you might be able to use IT assessments in your practice. But really, you do have to have the right tools. So it doesn't require expensive and very time-consuming data collection and report generation. And also, so that you don't need to hire and use expensive personnel like security experts, like I just talked about, to perform that kind of work. And that's where Network Detective comes in. So let me give you just a brief description of how it works. The tool is specifically designed so that you can run a data collector on your prospect or client network without installing any software. It's completely non-invasive, and that's key. There's no registry changes, nothing at all is installed. And it's especially important when you're prospecting. Works very quickly. Scans can run in as little as, I don't know, 30 to 45 minutes for small to medium-sized networks. Gathers the data, and what it does is it produces a zip file. You bring that back to your office. Customer never sees that. You import it into the Network Detective application. That's where you set up the branding and run the reports. Really, it's easy to do. I talk to technically savvy salespeople all the time. They're able to go on site, run the data collector during their introductory meeting with their prospect. They let it do its thing. It gathers the data while they're running through their interviews, generating rapport with the prospect and doing the selling. So this is important. I'm often asked, why would I need a tool like Network Detective if I've got Kaseya or Enable or some other monitoring system? So sure, you can install a bunch of agents or licenses, or even put a probe out there for a week or two. But what does that cost in terms of the extra licenses, let alone your time and effort? And what happens when in a prospecting situation something goes wrong? Seriously, if you go in and install software in a network, something happens later that day or the next day, who are they going to blame? Themselves? Their current provider? No, they're probably going to blame you. You were last in to do anything on the network. So you might even get a chance to, spend time on the road to go back out and fix that problem for free. As I said, Network Detective is completely non-invasive. You run the data collector without installing anything, and you bring that data file back and generate the reports. On the other hand, though, let me say Network Detective is not going to get you the performance-based metrics and statistics that your monitoring system will, especially agent-based systems like, Kaseya. Those could be running for weeks or longer and should be giving you that detailed performance reports. But that's normally not appropriate for new prospects. And when they're a customer, I still want to say that there's still really good reason to run Network Detective on those existing clients where you do have monitoring installed. And typically, it's because these programs don't perform any real ongoing analysis of reporting on things like Active Directory, nor do they perform external vulnerability scans or regularly look for open ports on an IP scan across the entire network, looking for potential security holes. They don't provide professional documentation on things like network shares, who has access to what, security policies. None that I'm aware of do a deep dive into Exchange or provide routine health checks and deep information on SQL. But using Network Detective regularly can do all of that for you. And there's also a change report where you can quickly identify systems you might not be charging for in your managed services. So, how does it work? First off, like I said, we found your average, let's say 5-6 server, 50 to 60 workstation environment on a 256 IP network. It's going to take maybe, 40, 50 minutes. And that's everything from start to finish. The entire process is really straightforward, broken down to just a few steps. Data collector from the customer's domain controller. And don't worry, if they don't have a domain controller, we can also do work groups. You'll simply fill out the wizard, mostly next, as I'll show you, and the collection starts. While that's happening, if you need to do a local data capture or the security data capture, you'll run that on a few other local machines because there's a few things that we can only get and test from inside the network. Once it's done, you'll gather the information, head back to your office, import the data, and generate the reports. So here's what it looks like. Really simple to use. This is the Network Detective application. Basically, you say you initiate an external vulnerability scan. You enter either the set number of IP addresses, or you can even enter a range up to 16 IPs per report, and that's it. Let it do its thing. When you're on site, running the data collector is easy. Choose the scans you want. Make sure you've got administrative credentials. Accept the full domain. Here you'll enter the customer's domain, rapidfiretools.com, mycustomerdomain.com, whatever it is. We'll do a who is query and MX record lookup, put that in the reports for you. Just validate the IP ranges that we're going to scan. And by the way, if the customer has multiple locations, we can certainly scan, additional subnets via VPN or MPLS or whatever. You would just need to enter those other IP address ranges. We'll check for things on the network via ping and SNMP. We'll use Microsoft's MBSA to collect missing patches and weak password. Check to see if content filtering is working. Verify and run, and that's it. Mostly it's just like I said, next, next, next. Takes you 2 or 3 minutes to kick that off. Now, what do you do about information that no automated data collector can gather? Information such as the status of the server room, temperature of the server room. Is the cabling labeled? Is it well laid out? Maybe document the phone or fax system, or put together information on processes like BYOD. So we've got something called Inform, which allows you to create your own IT checklists. Very cool. Checklists, questionnaires, or surveys. That way you can gather that information when you're speaking with the stakeholder of the organization. The way it works is there's a template that you'll use that has all of the questions. You'll print that out, bring it with you, make your notes while you're going through. Once you're done, you'll transpose that back into the Inform for this customer, and you'll be able to print out the interview response report with all of your information and even include pictures. They're worth more than 1,000 words in a lot of these cases. And what's also extremely cool, you can identify items as you're keying them in to be either a strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat. It will automatically generate a SWOT report for you. So, once again, raising the level of discussion with your customers from an IT perspective to much more of a business and IT consultant for them. When you do import the data, now you're back at your office, here's how easy it is to set up and generate the reports. So when you're going to run this for a customer, you'll put in the report prepared for, report prepared by, you put in your company name, the technician's name if that's how you want to do it. You'll set up, import your logo, which is go on the front page of each of the reports that comes out, and also on the header of every page. You can choose from a number of themes built into the product. So you can kind of customize this, make it look like your branding. Choose from a set of predefined color palettes to use, or even define your own. And we've got a number of cover images that go on the cover page so that you can be industry specific, like legal, medical, retail, automotive, or even upload your own. And all of those defaults can be saved, of course, so that you only enter them one time. After that, it generates the reports, and you're done. And actually, let me just show you a little bit of what you get here. So all of these, the reports come out, they are Word documents or Excel, and fully brandable, as I mentioned. So what we're looking at here is what we call the client risk report. We'll have an indication of the discovery tasks that were performed, a risk score for the network, and then, which is great, as sort of your executive summary ties to your proposal, in plain English, a list of the issues and recommendations that we dynamically put together for you. When I show this at trade shows, we'll have sample report documents. People say they can't believe it. They're saying, we don't have to type all that in. No, all this is generated for you automatically. And then there's additional things, it's kind of more like eye candy that you can talk to your customers about. So charts and graphs, very high level, perfect for talking to the CEO or CFO of the customer that you're going to work with. The full detail report has a ton of information. Here's the appendix. So for each domain, we go through a lot of different things, information then on the servers, network shares. Let me just click over to patch summary. What you're going to see here, issues are highlighted in red for you, so it's very easy to show a customer what's going on and also to do your own analysis. So a ton of reports, all great information. And by the way, all of those sample reports are on our website for you to take a look at. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Kevin Jones, who's going to go into a little deeper information on how you can take this information and really act on it. Kevin, you there?
I am. Thanks, Mark. Great job. So let's get changed over here and we'll get started. How's my screen looking over on your side of the world, Mark?
Looks great.
Wonderful. And again, thank you. So, again, it doesn't matter whether your assessment process is manual or automated, or whether you're a technician or a salesperson. Network Detective, it really is the best product around when it comes to performing comprehensive assessments. So now that we've seen how easy it is to collect the data and how quickly the reports are generated, I thought we could come full circle and talk through some of the ways to use the reports. And as Mark mentioned earlier, there are quite a few ways to use these assessments in your business. And the first of which is lead generation, and this is going to get you in front of the customer. The second is the pre-engagement, and this is where you'll do the assessment and present your findings to the prospect in order to try and win the business. And at the end of your presentation, they'll get a very clear picture as to the level of service they are getting today, and they'll either sleep better, or more than likely there will be a laundry list of problems identified and an opportunity for you to make changes for the better. So again, as you go through these reports, you're going to notice quite a few shortcomings with the current provider. These could be items that the client is somewhat aware of.
Excuse me a second, Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't look like your screen's advancing.
It doesn't. Well, what do you see on your end? Do you see not providing great service?
No, we're seeing our next presenter.
Oh, well, that's no fun. Well, I'm seeing something completely different. So let's change things up here. How about now?
No.
How about now?
Yep.
Yes. All right. So let me go step back here a few seconds. So we talked about the lead gen, and wanted to follow up and talk a little bit, obviously, about how you can use these for lead generation and the engagement itself. So what you see here is a screenshot of one of the reports, and I'll drill into that in a second. But back to what you're going to find as to the quality of the provider itself. Some of these items might be those that the client or prospect is already aware of. Are there old machines in Active Directory, old user accounts missing AV, patches, etc. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to find in the reports themselves. And they really all sum up to basically one point, and that is that the current provider is not doing a very good job. So let me click on this report here. And again, this is the users and patching section, rather. And the user section, what we're looking at right here, this is every user account, okay, when it last logged on, is it enabled or disabled, the password, is it set to expire, and a bit more. And if you find a lot of old accounts that have not recently logged in, they probably don't have the right policies in place or aren't manually disabling old accounts when they should. And this could put them at risk of unauthorized access. So I'm going to scroll down to the patch summary section here. And this is going to go through each machine and tell you whether or not they're out of date, specific to the patching and the service packs. And the nice thing is about this report is that it breaks things down even further. So let's say if you've got a SQL server, you can see if they are, SQL or application level missing patches or just common operating system patches. And again, if there are a lot of missing patches, chances are the current provider isn't tweaking and configuring their RMM correctly, or they just don't have the right policies in place. So, again, these are a lot of little things, but they all start to pile up at the end of the day. And this will paint a very clear picture as to the level of service that they are currently paying for. So another problem with being supported via subpar service, shall we say, is the exposure to risk. As I mentioned, viruses, along with other things, are risks that come with not properly maintaining a network. The machines can be compromised via infection. Old user accounts can still get into the system and access potentially sensitive data. And the network could have some vulnerabilities from the outside in that could cause business downtime. And there really are a ton of risks that could be present. And these are going to vary from network to network. But let's take a quick look at some issues that are a result of patching and external vulnerabilities. So what you'll see here is that for a lot of the machines in the network, there is no antivirus. There's also quite a few antivirus products across the network, so there's no standardization in place. Now, it could be that your particular RMM tool comes with an antivirus, or you might be a reseller and could possibly get them straightened out. But at the end of the day, you can utilize this report and put forth whatever service or product to fix their problem here. So again, this is listing out every machine, and it's going at the AV, the spyware, firewall, and also with backup. So I'm going to scroll down here, and we're going to look at the external vulnerabilities section. Scroll down to content here. And so again, this report right here is a great way to paint yourself as a much more holistic provider. And oftentimes, the problems that you find are going to be a really quick fix. For instance, here what we're looking at is a particular port that's open. But it is a very critical, high potential risk, and we actually support that a little bit lower down in here so that you can actually see what the exposure, the threat vector is, and again, real quick to fix the problem. And again, all these little items start to bubble up with the current level of service that they are getting from their provider. And all of this, it really does beg a critical question. So the current service provider that's in there, do they know about these problems? If they don't, that's really scary, because they're the ones that are supposed to be managing the network, and they obviously aren't capable of doing so. If they do, well, that's just as scary, since they're willing to do a mediocre job. Now, either way, once you presented your findings to your prospect, they'll know exactly where they stand and where they can turn to should they decide to switch providers. So another way to use the assessments is for actual onboarding. So you've already got them lined up to come on board, but you need to speed up the process and increase the accuracy. And since this is a new customer, you want to make sure you get everything documented in whatever system you are using so your technicians can hit the ground running on day one. So using Network Detective, you have everything you need. The documentation is readily available and easily referenced. There are integration points with AutoTask and ConnectWise, and this will actually allow you to create and populate all the necessary configuration items. And then if you need the data in another system, you can just save the Excel output as a CSV. So let's click on that right here. And the great thing about the Excel data is it's everything that you will find in the full detail report. You just have more flexibility with the data itself. So again, see on the tabs down here, all of this data is in those Word docs that Mark showed earlier. It's just a lot easier and more flexible to utilize this data, again, if you are going to be populating a internal source system, need to do charting, graphing, that kind of thing. So another way you can use Network Detective is for uncovering, discovering, and selling projects. Okay? So you've run the reports, you've identified the problems, you've kind of established the current state from a baseline perspective, and presumably you know where they need to be. So while there are plenty of projects that Network Detective can uncover, for this example, let's take a look at doing an Exchange migration. You might find that they are looking for more mobility. Perhaps they're still sitting on Exchange 2003 and need assistance with an end-of-life upgrade plan. But let's assume that they're looking for assistance on migrating to Office 365. Now, for starters, you'll need a lot of information. How many mailboxes? What are the sizes? What needs to be backed up or migrated? Who has access to send email on behalf of other users? So for that type of migration, this type of report really is critical. It's going to list every setting on every mailbox, what folders exist here, quotas, basically anything and everything you can imagine as it pertains to a mailbox is going to be listed in here. And this is just one of the reports that you can get out of the Exchange Assessment module. And again, email is very critical as far as the ongoing operations of any business. So you need to make sure you get it right when doing, again, either on-site or to cloud migration. Great report. And that's just one example. Others are listed here. It's many ways to skin the cat, so to speak, as it pertains to discovering new projects. And it could be at the email level, standardizing operating system, putting in a centralized antivirus solution, plenty more. And the other good thing is, back to the current state perspective, with Office 365, or let's say an XP to Windows 7 or Windows 8 migration, you need to make sure that you have the data on your end as well so that you purchase the right number of seats, making sure that the applications are compatible, and of course, making sure there aren't any hidden gotchas at the end of the day. And this will help you establish both the current state and also, since let's say you're going to be moving them to Exchange, you can actually run this report on the new target environment, and then you have a good comparison so that you can make sure that before you do the actual migration, all the settings are as they were before. And last but not least, as far as utilizing the reports, you really should be creating these for your existing customers. Almost every service provider, yes, has some form of monitoring tool, and they do provide some level of reporting, but they're more statistics-based as far as uptime, downtime, resource utilization, etc. And they really only show a small part of the big picture. And most of the times, it's in terms your clients have a hard time understanding. So when it comes time to produce collateral for your account reviews, you'll find no tool better than Network Detective. It is going to be tremendous to supplement your current quality of service because you're going to be able to back it up with the quality of detail in your account reviews. And again, what's better than having a satisfied customer sitting right in front of you to discuss other opportunities or to potentially redo contracts so that you're getting paid for supporting something that you might not have been aware of and they might not have. So I'll show you that in just one second. And, ask yourself how often you are doing assessments for your current customer. The RMM tools out there really don't go to the level that Network Detective does. Out of sight, out of mind really does apply here. And if your customers aren't seeing consistent value in the services you're providing, why would they keep paying for it? So couple this together with your regular account reviews, and these reports are a great way to increase retention, and it's also going to keep the competition from ever getting a foot in the door. Now, while you're meeting with your customers, you do have the chance now to build rapport and trust by verifying that everything is where it needs to be. So you can consider some of these items. Security, who has access to file shares? What users are members of specific distribution groups when it comes to email? Who has access to send email on behalf of other users like the CEO? These are great questions to ask, and they will really show the customer that you are concerned about their business needs. So the share permissions report right here. Very simple. It's going to show you both the share permissions as well as the file system permissions on the network. It's a great way to verify access on an ongoing basis, but more important tool to use with the business owner so they can feel confident about the business security and their decision to choose you as a service provider. So we'll close this one up. Again, this is a whole lot of content. Wrap that. And also, another way to utilize this for ongoing, obviously, is through change reporting. These reports are going to take care of the documentation side of things. So let's say if they're planning on putting in a new piece of software and it requires to use a different operating system, let's say, I don't know, Windows 7, XP's end of life, you can use these to actually show changes over time And that is very critical because, you know, the list that Mark had brought up earlier, the directory of all the reports themselves, there is a lot of content here. But the great thing about this change report is it will run against the last time that you initiated a scan in a report, and it's only going to show you via the yellow highlights here what changes have been made. So again, you don't have to weed through the content. It will all bubble up so that you can address those items in your recurring business reviews with your customer. So last but not least, you know, Mark had touched on a little earlier about we've got the network, we've got security, you know, the standard, you know, line items, so to speak, as far as typical service deliveries when it comes to the managed service provider space. But the last report I wanted to show you today is an output from our newest module, our SQL Server. So imagine if you're doing your ongoing reviews, monthly, quarterly, what have you. You know, this is something you can tie in right now. Let me get down here. And this is the top level summary of their overall health of their SQL Server environment. And SQL Server is critical because that is really the product of choice when it comes to organizations, large and small, who are running mission critical applications and need a database in the back end. They're typically sitting on SQL Server. So now in your ongoing reviews, you can address both security and network, and now you can elevate yourself and start to discuss points specific to the actual mission critical systems outside of just email, but you know, those line of business systems, their ERPs, et cetera, et cetera. And what's great about this one is if you can see right here, you don't have to be a database expert to either read it or share the content found within, because it is going to utilize the best practice engine. And if there are, as Mark had mentioned earlier, items specific to the overall architecture of the database itself, fragmentation, et cetera, the placement of log files, you know, basic best practices, you can actually start to show this and fix either what they have currently, or as they start to bring in databases, you know, that you're not aware of, you can ensure that those are properly configured and managed so that their mission critical systems stay up and running as much as possible. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Mark. Mark, you out there?
Yes, I am. Thanks very much, Kevin. Fantastic stuff. There really is, you know, a ton of stuff that you can find and identify with this. So let me see if I can make myself presenter here. All right, here we go. Excuse me. So, just to quickly summarize things, you know, Network Detective really does give you the ability to run non-invasive scans on your client and prospect networks very quickly and easily. You know, and again, since the data is automated, the collection's automated, you won't accidentally forget to gather key information like you might if you were doing it by hand or using point tools. And as you saw, you can customize and brand the reports, you know, with your client's information and then, of course, your logos, colors, et cetera. These are completely white labeled. And the reports are Word and Excel documents. And that way you can edit them, add to them, delete things if you want, pull them into your own templates. It's for you to do what you like with them. And, you know, the ability to populate configuration items and connect-wise for each new client will really save you a ton of time and reduce the chance. And projects with you know, prospects and existing clients alike. You know, definitely use a security module like I talked about to develop and brand a security service. You know, the result I think will really be more satisfied, loyal customers. And I've never spoken to an MSP yet who wasn't looking for a way to increase retention, while at the same time creating a brand new, affordable, recurring revenue stream. I talk to our customers, and they tell me they're getting $199, $299, and up per quarter just for running and delivering the security reports and 10 minutes of analysis on your time. Something you can then walk through, really makes you stand out. The SQL module too, the ability to offer a routine health check. We've got folks doing them quarterly, some even monthly, depending upon the critical nature of SQL Server and and the applications of that customer. So let me talk a little bit about how Network Detective is set up and its licensing and pricing. So first off, there are 4 separate modules. We've got the network, security, exchange, and SQL Server. The network assessment module, that is really designed for your prospecting, onboarding, the discovery work that you're going to put together. The client risk is your executive summary, and then you've got a ton of great detail that backs it up, gives you insight into the environment, and is the information your technicians will use to understand the environment. We do also now have an XP migration report, fantastic for documenting, highlighting, and helping you sell XP migrations. The security assessment module, it has its own set of reports. A security risk report, again, becomes the executive summary for this module. This plays terrific with the network module when it comes to prospecting, finding and uncovering and documenting potential problems, but also becomes the basis for ongoing regular security health checks of existing customers. Something, like I said, many of our Network Detective customers are using it for. And then we've got the exchange module. Again, it's got its own set of reports. Kevin showed you a bit about the mailbox detail earlier. It's fantastic for ongoing documentation on clients that require that, your larger customers perhaps, but it's terrific for migrations, as you can imagine. And then we've got the SQL Server assessment module. Mentioned it already. Run it regularly to document routinely the health. Look for issues that might be in the SQL Server itself, or potential database problems like fragmentation issues, locks, database size getting too large. Lots of things you can uncover, and regular documentation really does elevate you with the prospect and your customers.